Number 6 was Vampires in New Jersey.
You're going to New Jersey to see vampires?
If I wanted to do that, I'd just go to Harrisburg. Let's see.
I don't get it.
I don't get it either.
Are there vampires in Harrisburg? Is that a Pennsylvania joke that I don't get because I'm not from the...
I'm from Pennsylvania and I don't get it.
Vampires.
Is Vampires of Harrisburg like Werewolves of London?
I hope not. I hope it'd be better than that.
But their hair was perfect.
Because they're from Harrisburg?
Oh, we're punchy and the show hasn't even started.
That is such a dad joke.
I'm a dad now.
That is true.
Welcome to the continued podcast adventures of Superhero Speak.
But I think many of the people that love this character and that love superheroes in general have used these stories as inspiration to say, you know what? I'm going to do something good in the world. I'm going to make a difference like my hero when I was a kid.
That is my fondest memory of it, because when you're doing comic books, you want them to affect people.
Right.
You want people to care. You want to strike emotions. And I knew that Clone Saga was striking a lot of emotions.
Can you imagine Pulp Fiction starring Goofy and Mickey Mouse?
I can totally imagine that.
I'm sure somebody's written that one
quarter
too.
pounder with cheese and France, Mickey? What? Royale with cheese. Yeah. I can totally.
See?
I would watch the hell out of that movie.
Yes, I gladly sacrifice my progeny to you, almighty Marvel beast.
But Neil Adams is somewhere going, it's my time.
How do you measure success? Hey everyone, you're listening to Superhero Speak, and I'm your host Dave.
And John.
And JD.
Are you going to add that dramatic pause every time?
I think so. I'm playing with it. I'm working. It's branding, man. I'm working on my brand.
Well, tying it to us, not a good start.
No. And
so I've discovered.
And boys and girls, we have a returning guest with us this week. One of our favorite people on the planet. So I think this is maybe your 6th time?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Obviously a glutton for punishment.
Yes.
Yes.
He is one of the he's the creator of Sparkshooter, sorry.
That's okay.
He is one of the creative minds behind The Terminal and Imminiet, and he has a lot of things he wants to talk about this week. So we had him on. I'm sure he's glad to be here. And of course, I'm talking about the one and only Troy Brownfield. How are you doing?
Yay! I'm good. How are you guys?
I'm doing good. So you said you want to do a reenactment of Reservoir Dogs as the Chipmunks this time, right? Is that...
No, it was, I was pleased and surprised to hear that the Mickey and Goofy Pulp Fiction wound up in the show intro. So that was fun. One of those crazy random bits. No, and I made the joke about, we should do a reading of the Reservoir Dogs script with Goofy and Mickey.
Yes.
You're gonna keep barking all day, little ducky. You're gonna bite. Mickey and Mr. Blonde. So I'm sure will scar people because I have actually great Michael Madsen stories from the Fangoria time, but I don't know that any of them are appropriate for outside of a bar. So I've just never talked about that.
Well, let's pretend we're at a bar.
That's a trailer for a later bit.
Oh, okay.
Find me to con, buy me beer, and I shall tell you of the Michael Madsen.
So it's really just a trick to get free alcohol. That's what I'm hearing.
Oh no. No, there are true stories.
Okay.
I'm sure that everybody that's worked in comics has had some kind of insane story that relates to one or the other, talent that everybody knows. And then when you cross over movie stuff with it, it just gets weird. And so, it's one of those things that's just, here, I'll give you a light trailer, right?
All right.
We had done, when I was working with Fangoria, we had done San Diego Comic-Con in 2007 with Madsen. And he had created a book that Fangoria was going to do called Shifter, and it was a werewolf book. And his hope was that he was going to produce it as a film with himself in the lead. And so he was out at the show, and worked with him over the weekend, and kind of got the understand some things about the way he worked, because he's a really intense guy. And when he says he's going to sign autographs, then damn it, he's going to sit there and sign autographs for a long time. He stays. He's a campaigner. And, with respect to that, later in the summer, we did Chicago. And there were a couple of guys working with us in Chicago that hadn't been in San Diego. And one was one of our coworker's brother. And he was just helping out. And, Mike comes to set up at the table, and he's got his Sharpies, and he's got some headshots and other stuff. And Jason's brother says to him, Michael, is there anything I can get you? And Madsen reaches into his bag and he pulls out 2 Red Bulls and he sits them on the table. And he's like, I'm going to need 6 more of those. and Jason's brother laughed, and he looked around. And in fact, none of us were laughing. We were just all shaking our heads. Like, no, that's not a joke. He's like, so 6 more Red Bulls. And Mike's like, that'd be great. And so, he just came back with 6 more Red Bulls and set them down next to the 2 that were on the table, and kind of watched in awe the rest of the day. He kind of kept checking in. Dude's drank 4 Red Bulls already. He's like, what am I going to get him for lunch? And I'm like, no, he'll go for lunch on his own, and then he'll go work out for like an hour, and he'll come back. He's like, he's going to work out. I'm like, yeah, he's going to go lift weights for like an hour and then come back and sign and be closed. And like, he was just a super intense cat.
Wow. I'm so shocked his heart didn't explode.
Yeah, he was a funny guy, but, just really intense. Which, of course, that lends itself to, funny situations when you're surrounded by a bunch of goofballs anyway,
Yeah.
We have no idea what that's like.
That's actually a perfect segue, talking about goofballs. So our JD's new favorite segment on the show.
It is.
When we talk about our interactions on Twitter and social media, and people's reactions to our podcast. So we have a few for this week, not too many.
Nice.
So Young, his Jimmy's Rustled is the on Twitter had responded to our Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles when we talked about them, the trailer being released at the San Diego Comic-Con. His response was that it looks horrifying, not even in a it doesn't look anything like my childhood sort of way. It's aesthetically displeasing. The animation seems cut rate, and the character design looks like it's on par with Sonic Boom. I don't know what Sonic Boom is, so I'm not.
Okay. So he's going to give it a try, is what
that sounds like it. Yeah, he's going to give it a try.
I respect the open-mindedness.
Yes.
That's not my Ninja Turtle.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of funny considering like how many versions of the Ninja Turtles that we've gotten. Give it a year, there'll be another one.
Right.
It's just, what's funny is I'm old enough to remember when the original cartoon debuted, and people who were fans of the comic at the time were so pissed.
Oh yeah, because it was so different than the comic.
Yeah. And that was like first stage turtle denial. Now it's like 20 degrees later.
So we got 2 polar opposite reactions when we were talking about Ben Affleck leaving the DCEU as Batman. The first one from Rob Foster, who said, I wish the entire CEU brain trust would vacate for replacement. My honest opinion. And then we have Omen One Media, sorry. I really want to see more Ben in these movies. I think he's the best part. So, there's a lot of people, like, that's just a good indication, like, and I've said this before, I think, there seem to be people torn on it because he was the best part of it, but do we need him to get, I don't know. What do you think, Troy?
Well, it's kind of funny. This actually puts me in mind a little bit of all the rumors circulating around of the Fox buyout, which you keep seeing the things on Instagram and so forth that says, only Reynolds is keeping his job, and everybody else is gone.
Right.
And it actually reminds me of, I don't know if you guys, would remember this necessarily, but, the kind of the worst season of SNL, the 85-86 season with Downey and Anthony Michael Hall and everybody. Okay. Do you guys remember the season finale of that season?
No.
Okay. The last sketch on that, of the last episode of the season was a bit where Lorne Michaels basically trapped the entire cast in a burning building and saved John Lovitz. And as the credits roll, instead of the thing where they're staying on the stage waving at the audience, like they're all walking around the room trying to get out as smoke filled up. That he saved Lovitz, but let the rest of the building burn down. And so the Fox thing and the DC thing at this point, I think that Warner, they've kind of indicated that they're going to save Gal Gadot and Jason Momoa, but I think that the setups for them getting to continue is clear. I don't think at this point, I think that the Affleck hasn't been difficult in the way that we've seen other stars be difficult.
Right.
But he's never looked enthusiastic. And I think that they might ultimately want somebody who's got the enthusiasm that he's not showing. Now, as far as I didn't have a problem. I know a lot of people were one way or the other. I don't think any of the Justice League films' problems were with the main cast. I was not a fan of Steppenwolf as a villain choice, and there's a lot of other things to nitpick, but really casting, I don't think, was one of them. I know my wife wasn't necessarily wild about Affleck, but I think that's part of the aftershock of Bale having been so good. Was, and she's a much more casual observer of all this than, the rest of the family that she's trapped with. My boys now are 13 and 11, and I'm sure they've got a lot more to say about it.
Right. No, I know that. I know how that is. My wife's the same way. She's kind of a casual observer of all this. In fact, she went out to the movies with me to see Ant-Man, and she hadn't gone to the movies to see any of those in a long time. And so she hadn't seen Infinity War. So the after credit scene made no sense to her.
Yeah.
So,
my wife, on the other hand, this is kind of funny because she was kind of pissed at us twice because she didn't know that the end of Infinity War was coming. Obviously, the other three of us did. And then, when they put the button on Ant-Man and the Wasp, she was like double pissed. Cause it's like, I got you twice. But I'm like, you had to expect that was coming in some fashion.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was also one of those things. Finally saw Infinity War just this past week. We purchased it, on digital. And so she finally saw the movie, and we get to the end and she's like, they're not ending it. Wait, no, they're not ending it like that, are they?
Yeah. So I guess, all wives, for those present sort of had the, Leslie Jones reaction.
Yes. And then the last little thing on Twitter, we just got a direct message from Kruger, like Freddie, but he's just at Kruger on Twitter. And it was just, that he said, really enjoying the podcast. I said, thank you. And then he replied, yes, keep up the good work. So thank you for listening. Right. It's nice to get good feedback once in a while, don't you think?
Thank you, Mr. Kruger, and be nice to children.
Yes.
So I put the link to the show in my newsletter every week, and I actually had a guy who emailed me back and told me why every thought that I expressed about the movies was completely wrong.
Nice.
And why is that?
Oh, it's a long email. Like, I don't know if this guy's coming back to the show, quite honestly, but this is one of those that's going in my email collection of, like, greatest emails I've ever received. Nothing about you guys, just that I suck. So it was entertaining.
Well, that's good.
Oh, man. You guys, this is on that topic. One of my all-time favorite non-fan letters I ever got, back when I was doing the original Shotgun Reviews site. And, this is late 90s, and I'd written a music review column for new stuff that was out that week. And, there were new releases by Avril Lavigne and Good Charlotte both. And, my review of Good Charlotte was just, no, Bad Charlotte, bad. And, I said some more at length about Avril Lavigne, and it was not necessarily like negative, because I thought, her voice was okay and the music was fine, but it was just like she was taking swings at subject way over like what a 15-year-old would have,
Right.
And I got this insanely hilarious, email from somebody, and like, you could just see them kind of like shaking their fist as they wrote it. that called me a prep over and over, which was awesome, because that was the insult. Like, you prep, like, you would understand, punk. Yeah, like, that's right. All my friends who played music in their garages while we were growing up. Booking shows in people's basements, and, like, is that a red light? Run! Yeah, we've been prep. That was the first thing I thought of. I thought that was just tremendously funny on so many levels, but I love that was like, there was no swearing or anything. It was like, that was just the highest insult that was reached, and I love that. That was fantastic.
You don't understand the 15-year-old skater mindset.
That's right. I was out of touch already, like, just out of grad school and completely lost touch.
Why you gotta go make things so complicated?
No. Could it be any more obvious? No.
This is the dad joke night. I can feel it.
I'm on fire.
So speaking of things that you've worked on, got anything upcoming you want to talk about?
Oh, wow. Well,
how many
things? Let's go ahead and talk about Sparkshooter first, since it's a nice segue from bands and everything. This particular week is kind of a good time to talk about it, because we're actually taking a break of 1 week between the end of chapter 12, which is last week, and the beginning of 13. We take these breaks every once in a while, usually structured around chapters, just frequently near holidays and stuff, because it allows Inkaru to travel. Just to brief people who don't know, Sparkshooter is a webcomic about a struggling young band. It's written by me, and the art is by Inkaru, and she is an artist from Spain. She also has a webcomic called Elite Raiders that she both writes and draws, and then she's got a series of graphic novels that she's put out in Spain called Trisqua, which you can also find on her site and the Elite Raiders site. But every once in a while she takes small vacations, just around nearby locations in Europe where she goes to shows and stuff, and so we'll throw a week break in there just to split it up. And this was a natural break, but it also came at the spot of a pretty good cliffhanger in the story. A lot of stuff that we've been building up to kind of comes to a head in chapter 12, and so now we've got this break going to chapter 13, which begins really the third volume of the story. And this is a good time, if you're interested in it at all, to go back, and if you've read it and haven't read it in a while, you can catch up. If you've never read it before, the entirety of the story is on the site. It's about 279 pages of story to this point. And, a little bit further in the year, toward late fall, we're actually, through Imminiet Press, going to run a Kickstarter for Sparkshooter and finally collect in a trade the first 6 chapters. So basically a 6-issue trade of the first half of what we've done so far. And that was always kind of in the cards, but, knowing that we had kind of Imminiet in place and the mechanism for doing things, we've kind of learned to trust the process a little bit. Steve was on a couple of weeks ago and talked to you guys about some of that, but my kind of hesitation on doing Sparkshooter like that over time was really just, I wanted it to be done right. And we have kind of, at this point, learned a lot of lessons and worked with enough people that, I think I'm going to be satisfied with the product that we get, to the point where we can do it that way. And, it just feels good to kind of sort of have that level of confidence about it. But, it's also very different than a lot of other things that are being made. There's some comics out there that deal with music and things like that, but, it's definitely a comedy, but it's got dramatic stuff. It's definitely about that time that you confront, and it's not just in music, but in a lot of artistic endeavors, writing and so forth, where you're kind of at that moment where you have to make a decision. Does this just become a hobby, or is this the thing that I can actually do with my life? And I've always felt that was kind of the big question that hangs over the story. And I think that's pretty relatable to a lot of people in a lot of different ways.
Right.
So if that sounds interesting, then that's something for people to check out. So
does that is that a question that hangs over your head when it comes to writing comics?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it's hung over everybody's. I think, I'm kind of right now, knock on wood, I'm at a pretty good place. As you guys know, I've taught, for a long time, and I just recently made a big change, cause I don't teach anymore. I took a job with the Saturday Evening Post, and, that is my day job, writing stories for the Saturday Evening Post. And it's a kind of a magazine / newsroom environment. And it's located in Indianapolis, where I live. And, it's a huge culture shock at first for moving from, teaching for so long, into that. But on the levels of writing and so forth, because you guys know I did Newsarama for years and everything while I was teaching and all that. But, just going into that role, it's a very comfortable thing. And to kind of know that, you're in a environment with a lot of kind of like-minded and similarly talented people and so forth, and you're all kind of doing the same thing. Whereas, sometimes teaching and a lot of things surrounded with it could get very political, not, national level politics, but just there's a lot of jockeying
right.
And a lot of, administrative stuff over here. And sometimes it's difficult with like this class or this kids and so forth. And, there's a lot of good and rewarding things that come out of it. But after a long time of doing that, it's like, man, I get to go to a job where I write for my job. And then, when I'm at home, I can do my other thing. And it's very cool. And you have on one hand the security of the regular job, security that knowing you got like, insurance and stuff. And
right.
Then you're able to still do the other thing. Cause I think that that's really, one of the things that a lot of people who, make the full-time jump, like you guys said, we got a lot of parents right here talking, and, my 11-year-old, he's a type 1 diabetic. And so, that requires a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And, just being on that, it's like, man, that's a jump that at a certain level, it would be insanely hard to make that jump into the full thing. But right now, I feel like I've got a really good balance of those elements. I'm not alone. I think a lot of people think that most people whose names are in credits for comics, I think a lot of people in the audience believe that those people are working full time. And it's probably really closer to 20%, if that. The grand majority have other jobs, and they just don't talk about it. And you could. It's funny, when you get right down to it. There's some people that have some pretty big established names, particularly in the indie side of things, that if you really got into a conversation with them, you'd be like, "Oh my God, this guy's got a day job. He's talking about the day job he does too." Yeah. And I don't think people realize that it's kind of a reality of the form.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think JD knows a thing or two. JD?
JD?
Sorry, I had mute on.
This is a podcast. Talking's all we do. Why would you mute?
Because I had to go upstairs for a minute and banging around. No, I know. Yeah, you gotta pay.
What happened was like I got too real for JD for a minute.
No, it was so real. I was listening and I didn't realize I was muted. No, for real, you gotta pay the bills, man. And there's just not a lot of money in just doing comics, for the vast majority of creators. Sad but true.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing that's kind of similar in the touchstone to music, that if you get a functional touring band or a functional band that does a lot of, high end bars and corporate stuff and everything, they can make a functional living, but, they're not like rock stars. And even, some of the bigger bands like, that one of my favorite things ever that explains this is the TLC episode of Behind the Music, where Lisa Lopez breaks down all the math behind how they went bankrupt. And And, you know, that's, you know, if you really want entertained and to be aghast at the same time, go to YouTube, look up, you know, TLC Behind the Music, and she explains exactly how much they got paid for some of those records and how much money they were left with at the end of it because of all the people that got their cut and everything. And, you know, at the end of the year, like each one of the three of them took home, this is one of their biggest years. Each one of the three of them took home $50,000. And she's like, could have worked in an office.
Yep. Oh yeah.
You know, and it's like all this crap that you go through and all the, you know, the constant touring and the exhaustion and all this stuff and everything. And it's like $50,000.
Yeah. That's one thing that I think a lot of people don't realize, even today. Yeah, records make a lot of money for the record company, not for the artist.
Well, and that's, you know, that's true of comics, and it's not a knock on, you know, people, but there are, I think we all know that there are some of the smaller presses out there that, you know, they keep putting books out and stuff, but, you know, a lot of the writers and artists aren't getting compensated what they might be at other places, you know.
Right.
Or there are certain people who are making way more money in a disproportionate fashion than other people. And, you know, sometimes that's a thing that happens. Sometimes it's a function of it costs this much to get it out. And at the end of the day, you know, if we're going to keep the doors open, you know, we got to do this thing. And sometimes it's less benevolent. But,
very true.
You know, I think that that's one of the things that Kickstarter in a way has kind of democratized. Kickstarter does not help you with achieving distribution, but it helps you with the making of the thing.
Right.
Which is a big deal. And, you know, I think that we'll maybe achieve kind of some parity in that down the road. One of the things that's cool about Imminiet, being involved in Imminiet Press and all those guys is that, you know, all the ladies and gentlemen involved, we kind of feel the same way, and we're kind of at people that are at similar levels, in what we've done. You know, Justin Gray is at a higher operative level than some of us because he's done stuff with, you know, he wrote Jonah Hex for a long time with Jimmy Palmiotti and, you know, Freedom Fighters and other things that Justin has done. But, you know, we're all kind of in, I guess journeyman is a good,
yes,
good way to refer to us as a group. And, you know, putting together that Terminal Anthology series really started out with like a bunch of people who knew each other that wanted to work together. And then as it's gone on, it's like, you know, we can really use this kind of strength in numbers mentality to bolster things. Steve likes to say, you know, raise all boats. Steve Ekstrom. But, cause like currently right now, Eric Palicki is doing a Kickstarter for the first original graphic novel that has Imminiet as a logo on it. Like, Eric Palicki's, Atlantis Wasn't Built for Tourists, is in the Kickstarter right now. It's about 65% funded with 20 some days to go. But, Eric is the writer and, Wendell Cavalcanti is the artist. Mark Dale is doing the colors. And, Eric pitched it as Lovecraft meets Leone, which is cool. And, you know, Cavalcanti did some great art on this thing. If you go to Kickstarter and look up Atlantis Wasn't Built for Tourists, it's just a really cool idea. And, you know, that's going to be really great to see that with an Imminiet logo on it. It's a 96-page original graphic novel, and it is not a huge amount that he's funding it with. It's $3,500 is the total, and that's not bad at all. Similarly, Justin Gray is kickstarting a different one right now. It's not an Imminiet label, but it's something that he did with somebody else. But it's called a Billy the Kit, and it is an anthropomorphic supernatural western. So you've got characters that are like gunslinging rabbits and stuff like that. It's really cool. The art by Barry McLean Jr. freaking gorgeous. But Justin is about halfway funded on that, and he's got about 20 days to go. So, I mean, I'm pretty confident in the ability of both of these projects to make it, but it's definitely something, you know, I'd like people to know about. You know, Atlantis Wasn't Built for Tourists and Billy the Kit. Because it's representative of some of the kind of stuff that we are going to keep doing. And, you know, like I said, Sparkshooter, right now the loose schedule is, for the rest of this month, the Kickstarter for Atlantis is going to go. And then probably in September, you're going to see the Kickstarter for Terminal number 3 and number 4, which happens to feature among their talents Eric Palicki and Justin Gray. Yay! It's almost like it was on purpose.
Almost.
And then after that, probably about a month after, so will be the Sparkshooter Kickstarter for the trade. And it's also worthy of mention, somewhere in that time period, probably around September, you're going to see the Imminiet site launch, and I think some people are going to be really surprised in a very cool way when they see what the site looks like, because it's going to have webcomics and a lot of other cool stuff on it. And, creators talking about process, people doing other stuff, and it's just going to be a neat place to visit, even without, that background.
So a question I had, because now you're ramping up to do 3 and 4, and we didn't really ask Steve this when he was on. How was 1 and 2? Have you gotten much feedback or?
Yeah, see, this is one of the really cool things was hearing how some of the pros reacted to it. Not that you don't want to hear what regular readers think of it, but it's been very well received. But when we sent some stuff around to people, there were kind of some efforts early on in the process to send some people some things and see, because you're always looking for pull quotes and stuff like that.
Right.
But when you hear back from Howard Chaykin, when you hear back from people, Jamal Eigel, you hear back from people that you're kind of grown up with. Jamal's closer to our age, but like Chaykin, you hear back from some of these people and they're saying wildly supportive or effusive things about the work. It's incredibly gratifying. And there's some people I know that when they got to look at it, they're like, that just looks good. But it looks good because we got a lot of talented people doing the colors and letters and production. It was a real team effort. It was labor of love on one level, but I think that sometimes they expect, when you hear a Kickstarter or something, some people think, it's going to be, kind of a slightly lower level product. I don't know if they're thinking public access TV or something, but when they see it, and it is professional level stuff. And not just professional level, but good professional level stuff. I think they're kind of shocked. I think that they're kind of like, wow, and it really grabs them in a way that they might not have expected.
Right.
And I can't really say who we've got doing some of the colors and some of the other stuff in 3 and 4. But, in terms of colors, there are a couple of name colorists and people who have even very recently been nominated for awards who are doing some of the color. So it's going to look good. And 3 and 4 are about done. When we go to Kickstarter, those are going to be finished books.
Yeah.
It's not going to be sit around and wait for these to be done. Those books are going to be done when the Kickstarter happens.
Right. Steve did say that. And that's great. I know there's a lot of projects that go to Kickstarter and they're like halfway started.
Yeah. We had a problem with one too, which I know Steve talked about, where we got into some issues with printing and so forth, and we had to wait forever to get stuff, and that's all been rectified now, so that's not going to be a problem. But we delivered the digital product early because everybody that backed it got the digital product.
Right.
So everybody that got the digital thing was happy, and some of the people waited, like hey, when are we going to get the thing? And they had to wait around for the print one longer than we were comfortable with at all. But they were really cool about it because they understood the thing and they knew it wasn't a question of, this wasn't done, because they had a finished version of it in hand because everybody got the digital.
Right.
But it was just, unfortunate. But hopefully, we've addressed that a couple of times. We're like, man, we really want to be able to move past that. The best way will be, hopefully funding 3 and 4 quickly and getting that out, in a very timely fashion.
Well, is there any plans beyond 3 and 4, or you're just taking it as it goes?
That's a lot of work, though.
Yeah. Terminal itself is definitely going to be 6 issues. As far as the terminal and the terminal aesthetic of the kind of neo-noir stories, the pulp angle being tied into, having the terminal as a element in common.
Mm-hmm.
That is going to be 6 issues. There will be other things with multiple creators from Terminal working together, but it won't quite look like this. We want to have things that are unique and unique approaches. Sometimes those will be, multiple creators working in one genre. Sometimes that'll be a thing that multiple people are working on that one of the creators is kind of serving as the showrunner for, and other people will be contributing to it. But it's the freedom of being able to do something like that. I have a really crazy idea in terms of formatting that we're not going to unveil that quite yet, but it's only something that you can do if you control the means of production from top to bottom and have kind of all hands on deck.
Right.
It wouldn't necessarily be something that you would do. I think that if a big company tried it, they'd get killed for it in the fan press. I think if somebody like us tries it, I think that we'll get a lot of positive word because it's crazy, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's so we'll see. We'll see how that works out.
The story of 3 crazy podcasters talk about superhero stuff. You're going to give away a copy of the show with each issue?
No.
I can't give it away.
Oh, okay.
Can't give it away. No, but I do want to. I actually that kind of leads into something I want to talk about in a minute. But before I forget, I was doing all the talking about Atlantis and Billy the Kid, but I want to mention, we talk about webcomics and like ongoing webcomics are like comic books and stuff. But I recently started following a comic strip, like a traditional like 4-panel webcomic comic strip.
Mm-hmm.
That I really think people should check out. That's called a Problem Like Jamal, and it's by Tahid Bandia, and it is super funny. It has got, elements of maybe a little bit of the Calvin and Hobbes feel to it, but it's very topical in that, the main character Jamal, he is dealing with a lot of the things that you would expect that a young black child in an elementary school in America would have to deal with right now. And some of the elements of it are painfully real, and some of them are just hilarious. I was talking to Tahid at one point, and I'm like, man, is it okay if I laugh at this? Because he assured me that it was, because I'm like, man, because some of it is scathingly funny, and at the same time it's like, wow, that is almost too real. It's like, that is so real that I don't know I should be laughing at it. And then, but that's kind of the thing that he's going for, and he's just nailing it. But he's also doing stuff. He's been in this segment of installments for a few days where Jamal's older brother comes home from college, and he's supposed to go play ball with him, and the brother kind of ditches him to go hang out with a girl, and it's a really funny thing. It's also kind of sweet and painful, but it's kind of thing that like a sibling would go through, but it's made hilarious by the fact that Jamal's brother is so tall that you never see his head in the panel.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so his brother just towers over him in all the shots, and so like in those kind of moments of like semi-absurdity are what make me think of like Calvin and Hobbes,
right.
But that would be what it would be like when you're that young and you have a brother that tall. That would be what it feels like all the time.
Exactly. And it's just a really good strip, and it's not that far into, but it's every once in a while you see a thing and you're like, hey, that person's got it, like whatever it is. Like I saw that, and I read 4 or 5 of them in a row the first day, and I thought, man, like he is kind of coming to it like fully formed. There's not a lot of that awkwardness. It's kind of, I hate to keep going back to Calvin and Hobbes, but it's like when you saw Watterson, when you saw Calvin and Hobbes the first time, he was already on top of what he was doing.
Right.
And it only got better.
Calvin and Hobbes, Foxtrot, Bloom County, a few of the really good ones that were like that, where they came on and they just hit the ground running. There was almost like never a bad strip.
Yeah. Oh my God. The Bloom County heyday stuff.
Yeah.
Jeez.
So it's actually, the people can check it out at aproblemlikejamal.com. And it's funny because I put in a problem like, and it was the third suggestion. So
Nice.
So definitely it's got some traction.
Yeah. When I liked it, I think it was like 89th.
There you go.
Yeah. So I don't know how many likes it's got now on Facebook, but I was somewhere in the 80s. And so, good on that guy. Yeah, I've had a little bit of conversation with him, and he's, he would love to. Well, we were having a little bit of that conversation about, hey, how you make the jump,
right?
So he's definitely a person to watch for. Which kind of brings me up to this thing I almost mentioned. And I don't know, like, in terms of workshopping an idea, like, I've been wanting to kind of talk to people about it, and I haven't even talked to Steve about it yet, so you can tell how embryonic of an idea it is. But
well, you can tell us. No one listens to this podcast, so it'll be just between us.
Yeah. Yeah. Every once in a while, I like to throw something out that'll give the guys a heart attack. But I was jokingly talking about indie tithing. But we always talk about wanting people to try comics and stuff that are outside the big two, or even outside maybe the big five. But what does that conversation look like? And the other day I was talking to somebody, and I said, what if you really just united some people and just a word of mouth campaign or something? The idea of, look at what you spend in a week of comics. Is there 10% of your comic budget that you could put into something that you've never read before? Right. What does that budget look like? And maybe you only spend $20 a week. So do you take $2 and then $2 more later and spend that $4 on a book you've never read before or something else? And the thing that made me think about this was Dan DiDio the other day talking about how the market's crowded while DC's putting out 72 books a month. And, it seems almost, I'm not taking swings at DiDio or anything, but it seems kind of disingenuous when you're putting out 72 books a month that the market's crowded. And
you guys are crowding the market, not them.
It's like, to suggest that everyone else is crowded, it's like, yeah, I understand you want to sell your 72 books. but there was a time when Justice League meant one book.
Yeah. I think one of the only is, it's hard for some people because, like, they don't, if they're not on Kickstarter a lot, they just go to shows, the local comic book shop. But I mean, I've met guys bought their first issue and saw them a year later and they're just finishing,
Oh yeah. There's an element of that. In fact, I won't say the name, but there was it was like 97, 98 in Chicago. Saw this book in Artist Alley, had a big banner, guy's first issue. There's a dude wearing the costume of the character and everything. A year later, saw the same booth, same guy, same costume, same first issue, no second issue. By like 4 years later, there was still no second issue. They just kept coming back. And I don't know, did that one issue sell well enough for them to keep coming back to the show? Is that all they ever had to make with the thing? Or what was the reason that there was not a number two?
Right. We've run into, when I've done interviews at some of those smaller cons, we've run into people like that. I will not name them, but I can think of two people right off the top of my head that we've actually interviewed. And for 3 years, one of them for the last 3 years, he's had the same books.
Wow. Yeah. And, I'm not going to cast aspersions on anybody because it is a rough gig and sometimes it is hard to make it and pay for it. And, maybe they overestimated it and they made like 1,000 copies of a book and they haven't been able to afford to make more, or they're going to try to sell out everything. Maybe they told their wife they're going to sell everything that's in the garage before they make more.
Or something happened in their life that derailed them, which I've seen also.
Yeah. And you don't want to make too bad of a judgment, but it is, I understand that sometimes there's a reticence to purchase the independent thing. But I think that in a way that's kind of we kind of lose that. I think we've certainly lost that on the music side. Yeah, to me, in my head, the music and comic side have always been very similar. But, you used to go to the comic shop or the video store and the music store and walk around and pick stuff up and look at it. And, I don't know if it's the acceleration of life or whatever, but most of us just have pull lists. We see something online or we see like, oh, this is a big event. So you punch in the thing, however your comic shop does it. You either fill out the order form or you fill it out online, or you tell them you want to pull the thing, and then your book gets pulled and you can just run in and grab the stuff that you pulled and run out. You don't spend any time looking at the shelves. And that affects that in a serious way. And I think that there's a lot of people that do like to stop and look, and those are the people that are buying other stuff. But the people that, if you decided to make an effort that I'm going to just take a couple of bucks and spend it, because, Walking Dead wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
Without people taking a chance on it. All these other things for, Turtles that we mentioned earlier. And I'm not saying, that it's even us. It could be somebody completely different. Like some dude in Alaska that has 3 comic shops, maybe trying to make a book right now that we don't know about.
Right.
And, maybe that'll be the next person. But nobody's going to be the next person if we don't collectively try to devote a little more energy toward looking at some of the other stuff. And, the biggest companies aren't necessarily going to be the people that do that. Image will, because Image still finds people at shows and signs them. Image books like Ghosted came out of, books like 5 Ghosts. Image release from, a few years ago, that they literally ran across that at a show and signed that dude.
Right.
So, Image is looking because that's their thing. I'm not so sure about a lot of the other places. I'm not so sure about how much elevation that they're concerned with.
No.
But, a healthy mid list, a healthy lower list would be good for the comic shops.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, it's funny because the thought that popped in my head was, you mentioned Dan Dio and talking overcrowded, and I'm definitely not going to name any names, but definitely some of the guys I know that work over at Marvel, and I hear about how competitive it's just among the people that working for Marvel, that like, how are they ever going to take chance on, a guy they see at a show who's an independent when it's tough for even the top names to get on books.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just, you're right. It's guys, it's people like you with Imminiet has to raise the boats, as it were.
Yeah. And there's still going to be some man or woman who comes to a show with a portfolio that's going to wind up drawing Captain America. Mm-hmm. That's still going to happen. The likelihood of that continues to shrink.
Right.
So, you want to, while this thing still exists, figure out a way for people that might want to someday draw Captain America also have the ability to do their thing and have people interested in their thing, which, I would like to see. Obviously nothing against Captain. But you get the general idea of that.
Right.
Yeah, you don't like DC, that's why.
No. No, I like... Hey, I've been a huge fan of Rebirth. I'll tell you that much. So, there you go. Ooh, silence.
Yeah, no, hey, I'm the DC apologist. I gotta say, Rebirth is good. I'm just waiting for him to screw it up.
Oh, but no, it's...
Yeah, they already are right now, no.
No. It's kind of funny, because this was the thing that my son Connor said, my oldest, because, they had New 52. And, we talked about this a long time ago on the show, how Connor was really bitter over it. Like, Connor didn't like it at all. He was super turned off by it. And then when Rebirth started, he was just thrilled. And he loved it. And, like, after reading some of the first few titles, like Titans, with the Return of Wally West and, I Am Gotham and everything, I remember one day Connor looks at me and he's like, why didn't they just do this?
Well, you
it was
see,
funny
corporate
because,
America.
yeah, it was funny because it was true, because it's like basically it's a lot of the same talent. You know, it was a lot of the same writers and artists in different configurations, and it's like, I don't know, kid. It's like, yeah, but it's like, I guess they had 4 years to kind of figure out, like, this wasn't working well. If we were going to change it, what would we do? We'd do this. Why did we do that in the first place? I don't know. You know, but it was, you know, kids, you got it.
Because no one asked your son on how they should do it.
That's right. Let's get that kid on the payroll somewhere.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, it is funny having the kid theorists, because Connor's got about 50 different takes on what'll happen in Avengers 4. And, you know, I'd be okay with about 32 of them. So, you know, he does have a pretty good play. Connor and I actually do share one, big theory, but I don't know if that's ever going to pan out. So.
No, what is it?
Okay. This is just kind of funny. This is our pet theory, but they've deliberately put off the use of the phrase Avengers Assemble.
Oh, yeah.
Throughout the entirety of the MCU. We think that it would be the best punchline callback ever if whomever, whether it's Tony, whether it's Steve, whoever gets their hand on the Infinity Gauntlet, says Avengers Assemble to literally reassemble all of the dead.
Huh. That would actually be pretty awesome.
Could you imagine the reaction in the theater?
That'd be awesome.
Tony Stark, a dying, impaled Tony Stark with his hand on the Infinity Gauntlet says Avengers Assemble, and freaking everybody appears. Quicksilver included.
Yeah.
I think that people would, and you know what Quicksilver's punchline is? You didn't see that coming.
Oh, that's right. Oh. That's right.
No, it'd be, I didn't see that coming.
Yeah. So of course, you know, that's Connor's pet theory. He is deeply in love with this. But I'm like, okay, dude, just if they don't do that, don't decide to hate Princess Leia and stuff. Okay?
Well, now that Disney owns Fox, and
yeah, X-Men Assemble.
There's no more X-Men. They're just all Avengers now. That'll be
But they can say they can say they can say they're mutants now.
Yeah, they can use the M word.
Yeah.
Wanda and Pietro got some news about that paternity test.
There you go.
Yeah, it is kind of a weird world that we've had these kids in, as far as like what our experience with comics and stuff was as children, to what we've come to.
This is so true.
Yeah, back in our day, you had to watch movies with like Spider-Man with like fake webbing as people threw it from behind the camera. And,
that's right.
Yeah.
Compressed air cannons.
You get Thor guest starring on
the Hulk.
Yeah.
But it wasn't Thor. It was what was it? The lawyer or the Doctor Thor with the cane.
Well, it was the Thor back then.
Or was it Thor?
Dr. Blake.
Yeah.
That was Thor.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Blake, but he was
And you had Daredevil in the one.
Oh yeah.
Movie, The Trial of the Incredible Hulk, had Daredevil and the Kingpin in it.
Yes. That terrible Daredevil.
Yeah. But, you know, what's kind of cool about that, John Rhys Davies is the Kingpin, you know, gets to be the first, live action Kingpin. That was pretty cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
How far we've come.
That's a trivia question winner right there. Who was in Raiders of the Lost Ark and Lord of the Rings and the Marvel television universe?
I'm sure there's like only 1 or 2 degrees of bacon in that somehow.
Oh God. I'm sure there's somebody. Well, that's, you know, and that's all a weird thing too. It's, a friend of mine said, was talking about 80s stars and everything. You guys will love this if you don't already know it. Somebody said, whatever happened to Jamie Gertz? Do you guys know what Jamie Gertz does now?
No. She
and her husband own the Atlanta Hawks.
Get out of here.
No, she was the Hawks representative at draft day this year.
Huh.
Is that not the most insanely crazy thing? And it was because there was a Lost Boys commercial on.
I was going to say, Lost Boys, yeah.
It's like, that's not a commercial for the Lost Boys. Like, dude, what's Jamie Gertz doing? I'm like, she owns the Hawks. Like, what?
And and Twister. That's where I know her. Twister.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is a crazy planet. But I was gonna say, I forgot that when Dave and I were talking earlier, I said I wanted to say something about Marvel Legends.
Yeah.
For all the collector people out there, did you guys see over the weekend? Hasbro announced for the first time ever they made an announcement about new product at a show in Mexico.
Really?
And yeah, like there's a big toy convention, like the unboxing toy show in Mexico, and Marvel for the first time did Legends reveals, and they're really cool, just completely crazy ones. They're doing a Marvel Legends figures of the Living Laser, Nighthawk from the Defenders, and a Kree Sentry Build-A-Figure, which I assume is going to be in the Captain Marvel movie wave. But like the Kree Sentry robot, the purple and blue Kirby crazy robot.
Yes.
Yeah. And I thought, what a time, man. Who would have thought? You know, I've been stumping for a Nighthawk from the Defenders for years because I was a big fan of the Defenders, especially around the 90s and the early 100s. The whole, introduction of Gargoyle and like all this stuff with Damien Hellstrom and Patsy Walker and that great issue 100 of the Defenders. So it's really cool to see a character like Nighthawk show up. Cause, it's not a, my all-time, Marvel Legends want that has not appeared yet. Well, I mean, aside from Lockjaw, which we're kind of getting that NECA Lockjaw, but, Stingray. I've always loved the Stingray costume. That red and white, with the giant wingspan and so forth. I've always thought that was just super cool. Perez design. Just a really neat thing. I would love to see that show up. But,
I just find it interesting that they revealed them at, Unboxing Con in Mexico, San Diego.
Yeah, they did reveal a few in San Diego. Like the, some of the new X-Men, like the Professor X in the hover chair, which they've never done before. And he actually comes out of the chair, which was a knock on the Toy Biz version from years ago that he was molded into the chair. And Blink from the X-Men, some very cool character choices that they've got. But yeah, they revealed some of those at San Diego and then some of these. And I've never quite understood the playing it close to the vest thing, on the reveals, unless they're just afraid of revealing too much to the long game and making people not buy what's out right now. I think they want people to be excited with what's out. Cause they have some really super cool stuff out right now, like Cloak and Dagger, finally. Right. They literally never made him in the 6-inch scale for Marvel Legends until just now. And some other cool ones that are out there.
Dagger's done's pretty good too. The show is actually pretty good.
Yeah, it's what an interesting time for that. Well, the other night they had the finale of Cloak and Dagger, and they had it set up so that the finale was followed by the first episode of Runaways on Freeform, because that's only been on Hulu. But they did a special thing to also show the Runaways after Cloak and Dagger on the network, which is a great idea. You want to promote your cross-platform thing, actually loosen it up. Yeah. It's like, here's Cloak and Dagger. By the way, let's follow it with the first episode of a thematically similar series that you can go watch the entirety of on this other platform that Disney also has a stake in, because they're geniuses.
Well, they have a bigger stake now as well.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're gonna, man. Yeah. Oh, this is a question I wanted to ask you guys, because I don't know if you talked about it on the show, or if you did, I hadn't caught it. But what do you think of the DC All Access?
I think it's too expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There isn't any, like, when you compare it to something like Netflix and then, Disney, they're going to have so much content, they're going to be comparable to Netflix, to then offer, DC trying to offer a platform where they're not going to have as much content, but they're trying to be around the same price point.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to fly. If they were $5 a month, I think they'd get a lot more people.
Yeah. My kids are really into the idea of more Young Justice, because they loved the show. And the other day, Kyle, who's my 11-year-old, was like, do you know if they're going to put them up once a week, or are they going to drop the whole season all at once? And I said, that's a very good question, because if they drop them all at once, then we get it for 1 month, watch them all.
That's what we talked about last week. Yeah, we said exactly that, because this idea of everybody having their own walled garden means that a lot of people are going to be making hard choices as to what they want to watch, because you can't. If everything were on TV and you were paying a cable provider, you'd get a much lower price than if you paid, each individual studio or whatever to get what you want to see. And this, you can't pay DC and Hulu and Netflix and was it now Disney Access, and it's too much.
Yeah, and with the exception of, okay, so here's a good example. When I was a massive Twin Peaks fan, and I was very excited when Twin Peaks came back. In the return on Showtime. So I used my introductory free month of Showtime, right when the first episode started. And they dropped 4 episodes that first weekend, and then the rest were weekly, right? And I kept it through the end of the finale. I watched the finale twice, and then I dropped it,
Right.
I didn't watch anything else on Showtime except Twin Peaks. And I knew that it would come out on DVD, but I had missed it to the degree, and I wanted to see it, and I wanted to be able to have the conversations to the point that I got it, I watched it, I dropped it. HBO, I watch, I come and go on it because I watch Game of Thrones. But I know that there's other quality shows on there like Westworld, but there's not another thing on there that won't be on DVD.
Right.
Because HBO aggressively puts their stuff on DVD, always has. And Netflix is doing it too. I had a ridiculous conversation with somebody about I can get Orange is the New Black at the library.
Right.
Yeah, and it's like I don't have to spend my time necessarily, because it's hard. I'm not as good at binging as other people are. It's because the way that the schedule works, like our schedule, but I can have more time to go pick something up and kind of watch it on my own time, and I know I don't get to take part in some of those conversations, but at the same time, it's like, I just want to see it, Twin Peaks being the notable exception that I had to see it right away. And so I'm not a good customer on their model.
Yeah.
And, one of the selling features of the DC thing is we'll have all the original Wonder Woman episodes. I'm like, I already got them. I have all 3 seasons of Wonder Woman on DVD. My wife was a huge fan growing up. I got those. I think I got a couple for review when I was at Newsarama, so I think I might have paid for 1 out of 3. The Adventures of Superman, I got those. Partially because I loved it as a kid and it was a historic thing. So that has a lot less appeal to me if I can just go to my shelf and pull some of those things off. And I know that might sound terribly old-fashioned to have a DVD box set, but at the same time, I've got it. I don't need to pay for it again.
No, but I definitely agree with that mentality. There's some of the stuff that they're talking about is going to be on there. It's like, yeah, but everyone who loves there's not enough new and exclusive content that's worth $9 a month or $75 a year.
Yeah.
Unless you're giving me, because apparently that was one of the things they were trying to have a selling point too, is that they have some kind of store with exclusive items. I mean, unless you're giving me exclusive items once a month.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I wasn't terribly excited by the Titans trailer either, so that kind of killed me.
Boy. Yeah.
Yeah. That was kind of a killer.
Was anybody?
Was Ethan? Yeah, nobody I've talked to, and a few people at work, that F-bomb Batman just right there. That was it.
That was it.
Done.
Yeah. And the funny thing was with the boys, it was like, hey, the Titans trailer is out. I'm like, yeah, you're not watching it. And that's, kind of a line. They haven't seen Deadpool either. But that puts it in that category, even Daredevil and Luke Cage are not in that category, that it is, they're more violent and stuff, but there's a hard break, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I really didn't want to see Titans as done by Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
Just doesn't work.
No, not at all.
Well, if Robin has a shotgun, like, it might be interesting.
Right, and we even talked about that last week too, where Jeff Johns, he's breaking off from Batman and trying to find himself, and it's like, okay, I get that part of it, but when has Robin ever violently beat people up like that, broken necks, and then said F Batman?
Yeah,
that
Dick Grayson we're talking about.
Yeah. Not Jason Todd.
Again, not to play like the fogey card, but I mean, if we've been reading comics for a while, some of us read 5 years of that story and none of that happened. Like, I mean,
right.
when they were doing Batman Family and Robin was kind of going off on his own and was going to college, and those books were kind of happening simultaneously with the end of the first Titans series, and then the New Teen Titans launches in like 81. He becomes Nightwing in 84. That was not that arc.
See, this goes right back to it's the studio, the executives sitting there going, oh, we're on the Young Justice thing. We got to get the Titans out now. That's next, and so hire a writer to do it. Somebody who's never read the comics before. Describe the storyline to them, and then let them write something. Oh, and don't forget to make it gritty.
Yeah. Well, that's it was funny to me because it's like you just thought that like on the same weekend that like Shazam and Aquaman, those trailers are kind of like, hey, we've kind of learned our lesson, and then the Titans thing comes. Nope. It's like, well, today there's kind of a mystifying announcement today. They announced that there's gonna be a Supergirl film.
I did not hear
and
that.
I'm like, it's like that's weird. That, I mean, no weirder, I suppose, than doing 2 Flash movies, but they're struggling so much with Superman to put that in the hopper when you already have a show entering its 4th season.
Yeah.
Well, they've got 2 Joker movies now, so I mean, or 2 Jokers hanging around.
Yeah.
I don't know what I don't think anybody there knows what they're doing at this point.
Yeah, as opposed to the dent Feige has in his head from banging his head against the table for the last week. It's gonna.
Oh yeah. Everyone's reporting it, so it's not like, wow, Supergirl movie on the drawing board and in development over at Warner Brothers DC. Oren Uzel is scripting it.
Yeah, it doesn't ring a bell.
So yeah, wow. I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, I guess Black Mask is supposed to be the villain for the Birds of Prey film too, which there's established relationship with Catwoman as a villain, but I mean, I'm not sure where they're going with that story. If it was a different person, I might have an idea. But
every time we start talking about the DC stuff, all I can hear in my head is that one soundbite from Poltergeist, the girl screaming, "What's happening?"
What's happening? Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Well, yeah, I work with a guy, Chris Wakefield of the Wakefield Report, who has a podcast, the E-Ticket Report about amusement parks, and he asked me today, if I'd heard how Batista is very firmly in the James Gunn camp and so forth, and it's like that is a big PR vacuum for them right now. But on one level, it's irrespective of that, it's kind of funny that that's like the only problem they have right now. Like everything else is pretty smooth,
right?
By comparison. When they make announcements, like I don't see a lot of people going, "What? What are you talking about?" When they make the announcements, most of the people are like, "Hey, that's pretty cool." Yeah. It's like, we're going to do a Cloak and Dagger series. Oh, I dig it. There's not a lot of screaming.
It was a forced error, though. They did that to themselves.
Oh, yeah. That's, and I think that kind of the weirdness and the lack of continued response, I think, is probably motivated by the fact that they realized that on a certain level they were had by the people who motivated the, attention. And I think that that's probably why you don't see like an Alan Horn or a Bob Iger or somebody coming out and saying anything about it, because I think that they're just kind of desperately hoping people will stop talking about it. So that, you know, I mean, I could, despite what Deadline or other people are saying, I could still see Gunn coming back. But I think they just want it to go away long enough that they could do it.
Right.
Why? If they came back and did it, they'd probably get the support of almost every fan they've got.
Yeah.
I mean, to show that they're actually, you know, going to be the bigger persons and say, hey, we made a mistake. We got bullied into this, railroaded. We didn't stop and think, you know, bring them back.
Well, and the other thing too was that I made a comment about this on one of the Facebook pages. I'm like, the easiest solution in the world, and you could work this out in 15 minutes, you know, because I'm sure that Feige wants it. Feige's a huge fan of his work, and I'm sure that Feige knew about this shit.
They came out when they vetted him.
So my take on it is like, do the movie and donate your fee. Donate your fee. Keep your points, but donate your fee. Whatever your quote is, pick the appropriate action network and, you know, the appropriate charity that someone that's going to help kids that have had the real problem, you know, from the ill humor. Donate the money so that we can actually help children. And then you make it into a thing of, not only have I learned my lesson, but I'm going to do something to improve the lives of kids that were actual victims.
That's a great idea.
And you know, I think that would, you know.
And then have Disney match it just to make sure. Just to push it that even, you know, that Disney is like, understands what his position is and that you can be forgiven for the stuff, but you can still make amends, you know?
Yeah. It doesn't quote unquote solve it, but at least it addresses everything in a way that, you know, the people responsible for that crap do wind up with a little bit of egg on their face. Cause you notice that that the efforts to go after like Patton Oswalt, Michael Ian Black, and Sarah Silverman, they failed miserably because it blew up to the degree that it did. And I think it would suck horribly if someone as talented as James Gunn, you know, got wrecked by, you know, obviously, I mean, it's like, you know, it's humorous only on the level of, I wonder how many people ran scrambling back to their Twitter feeds.
I do think right, Troy, with that, because I think one of the reasons that they did what they did is they didn't want any black marks on them while the Fox deal was.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, so that's an awful good point.
I think once the dust really settles from that is when because they're not even commenting on it, from my understanding. You know, everyone's saying all this stuff and there's all this speculation, and Disney they made their statement when they fired him and that's it. Like, they haven't said anything.
Yeah. And I don't think they will for a while, unless you have people like, you know, Batista and stuff pushing the point, because it's not going to be too awful long before these same people are going to be asked to do the Avengers 4 PR rounds.
That's probably when you'll hear something, because he, like with the Infinity War, he directed and wrote the scenes with the Guardian, right? Mm-hmm. So
yeah, he's got a co-producer credit on the movie too,
right?
On War.
So that's when you make an announcement like that, like, oh, you know, decided to donate his money to charity from Avengers 4, and we welcomed him back in the fold, or whatever, you know?
Yeah. Well, he also, this is one of my favorite things about Infinity War, on a long list of favorite things, but he gave the Russos 3 songs to pick from for the Guardians introduction. See, he's like, it should be one of these 3 songs, and they picked Rubber Band Man from the list of 3. And I think that that's just hysterically funny. But that's the level of involvement that Gunn has.
Mm-hmm.
You know, here's your 3 choices. We'll take this one. I mean, you know, and to take that presence and eject it, you know,
right.
They're
not
like I said. Oh, go ahead.
Not like the DC directors who are phoning it.
Well, I don't think Patty Jenkins phoned it in.
No,
I think she did a hell of a job.
They got lucky. That was like stumbling onto like gold, you know. Just still have no idea how that happened.
All right, and here I'll say this, like, for Crying in the Wilderness, like, because we know that the executives aren't listening to us right now. Haha. But where the hell is Catherine Bigelow, man? Why isn't Catherine Bigelow directing a Marvel or a DC movie? Because she is action gold. I mean, she has done incredible work, and with a lot of these actors, Hurt Locker, Renner and Mackie were in the Hurt Locker. Pratt was in Zero Dark 30. I mean, actually, she field tested the viability of all three of those cats for action roles before they got their Marvel jobs.
Right.
Widowmaker, Strange Days, she's done a lot.
Yeah, she's great. Near Dark. Ugh. Near Dark is wonderful. Have you ever seen that?
No.
Oh my God.
Sounds like I have to.
Vampire
movie.
Western with like half the cast of Aliens. Lance Henriksen, Bill Paxton. She made it right after Aliens, and she was married to Cameron, and Cameron was able to get some of the people from Aliens for her cast, and Adrian Pasdar is also in it. It's just a really great, just like dark vampire movie that's got like Western elements to it.
Oh, I was gonna say, because the last good Western I saw was Silverado. So. Oh
my God, I love that movie. I can't believe you said Silverado. I love it.
It's the Western for people who don't like Western.
Yeah, it's perfect.
It's like so Western, it transcends the Western genre.
Yeah.
and becomes good. Really good.
It's just everybody is good in it. Dennehy is fantastic. Brian Dennehy is tremendous. And I absolutely love the story about the dog. That's concern. Oh, I did go to prison. But the dog sprung me. Oh my God. Jeff Goldblum film.
He was in there as a evil guy. And
Kevin Kline, Danny Glover, Kevin Costner, Scott Glenn.
Kevin Costner, he was good. He was good in it, for crying out loud.
Oh, he was terrific. That was the first time I'd seen. I think it was probably the first time a lot of people saw him. But he was great.
John Cleese was in there.
Oh, that's right. The sheriff of I could talk all day about Silverado. Lawrence Kasdan script. Guy responsible for a lot of good moments in Raiders, Empire,
But
Kasdan never gets enough credit.
Try to walk it back. Oh, let's see. Back to Near Dark, which has vampires, and then Catherine Bigelow. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe we'll get lucky and bring. Well, you know what? If Marvel's smart, they'll grab her before DC does.
Yeah. When they were talking about Captain Marvel for so long, I'm like, is this going to be when Catherine Bigelow gets announced? Is that one?
I just saw an article. The Variety had floated her name out to direct Batgirl.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, I'd take that.
As long as she doesn't in the middle just say F Batman. But that wouldn't happen with her.
Well, she did in that really bad version of
the Killing Joke.
Yes.
Oh, God. No. I had made myself forget that. Why did you bring that up? You know how much alcohol it's going to take to repress that?
I'm sure you have plenty.
Well, if you find me at the right convention, you can repress that, and I'll tell you the rest of the story. Yeah, so full circle.
Yeah,
full circle.
Cool. But I also, if you didn't like the Killing Joke or their version of the Killing Joke, do not see Batman Ninja. Do not buy it. Do not watch it. just don't. Just trust me on this. And this is coming from a guy who's liked almost all the animation. No.
All right.
So to segue back to you, Troy, do you have any other projects coming up that maybe a collection of prose?
Oh, yeah. Yes, I do. Yeah, actually, I'm getting close to the end of that. I've been talking about it for a while. And it kind of changed shape a little bit, but I'm almost to the point. I think that's going to be, probably a digital release first. And it will be, branded through Imminiet Press. But it is, tentatively titled Inhabited and Other Stories. But it is a collection of mostly horror stuff, of varying lengths. I mean, it's all short stories. There's a couple that are more novelette territory, like 14,000 word kind of things. But yeah, I've been working on it for a while, and in a way, because I wrote the Prince Dracula novel a while back, and these were a lot of things that I just wanted to kind of get down over a period of time. And in a way, it's kind of clearing the decks, because once I finish that, I'm starting to work on a new, completely original prose novel. And I don't know how long that'll take.
Right.
But it will also be in the horror / suspense vein. But that'll probably last a while. But this is something that I've worked on for a bit. And it's kind of hard to say. It's kind of hard to explain about or talk about stories that people haven't written yet. But it's just, I think that the short story form has a lot in common with comics.
Yeah.
Especially when you look at individual issues or small arcs, and you think they kind of have the same effect. But I like that in short stories, you're not necessarily beholden to going back to them ever.
True.
You can kind of leave it, on the table, as it were. And it kind of had a good experience, just the other night, where I had one that I wanted to kind of get out, and, I had made a lot of changes to it, like midstream, and, I finally hit upon something that's like, oh, I'm going to do this, and it worked out really well. And it's like, that's just was really satisfying kind of thing. It's very wonky writer process kind of stuff, where you're like, yeah, when you're working on a story and you kind of actually feel it tell you, it's like, no, do this. And then you do that, and then you're much more satisfied. Because sometimes you try to force a thing and it doesn't work, and that it will only lock you up.
Right.
And, whereas that longer story, I mentioned the ones around 14,000 or so, it's called Caretaker. That one went pretty smoothly from start to finish in terms of where I wanted it to go. It kind of did what I thought it would, and ended up being longer than I thought. But, I was pretty happy with it. It's kind of an interesting thing when you do this, because you get to play with forms and stuff. And, at the end of the day, it's like, it's fun to have done it. And in a way, if I have a director inspiration on it, it's King. The first Stephen King thing I actually read was Night Shift, which was his first short story collection. And, he had 20 short stories, but by that time he probably had like 80 in magazines or something. I don't know. But, it's like when you're writing something, it's like, I don't know where this is going to go. And, you write a couple of shorts, and it's like, I just know that I want to write some shorts, and I want to get those down, but I don't know where it's going to go. And then at a certain point, you're like, hey, this is going to be a collection.
Right.
But it's not going to be super long. It's going to be a digital original that sell for a low price. I'm not looking to make a hardcover and sell it for $20. That's not remotely what I'm after with this kind of thing. What I want it to be is like a clearing of the decks and say, okay, this is kind of where I'm at now, and this is the kind of thing that I'm doing. And then I'm going back to a book that's going to be completely mine, and, which will be the next thing, on the prose front. But, it took a while. There's a long time where I'd stopped doing it, because it's hard, when you're teaching and doing comics and all that, to kind of do everything.
Right.
And now I've kind of gotten in this weird space where, like, when you're at the Post and you work during the day, and I get to write really cool stories at the Post. I mean, I got to write about the 50th anniversary of Franklin coming into Peanuts. Got to write about like 30th anniversary of Yo MTV Raps, like, cool.
Oh my God.
That's quite a jump.
Yeah. Cool stuff, pop culture stuff.
Oh yeah.
And
Cool.
like one of the things at the Post is kind of like Celebrate America. So I was looking at anniversaries, and I'm like, oh my God, Yo MTV Raps is 30 years ago. And that was 30 years ago today, in fact, first episode.
Oh my.
And so, but you write that kind of stuff, and it's fun. It's fun to look at, like, interviews with Charles Schulz, and it's fun. It's like, which video am I going to put in this? Eric B. and Rakim, follow the leader. Yeah. So it's like, what am I going to do with this? And then it's like, then you kind of feel charged. Like, I did that, and it's like, so when we go back into the writing thing, it's kind of like, it's not like oh, it's the drag because I graded papers and I did this stuff and I wrote curriculum. Now it's like, oh man, I wrote about this cool stuff. Now what am I going to do?
Right.
And so it does change your attitude on how you can deliver that material. And so it got me back into the point where it's like, not only am I going to deliver this material, but I'm going to knock it out and it's going to be done soon. I can't say for certain, but I would love to have it available or at least preview it for October. But we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. That might be exceedingly optimistic, but we'll see how it goes.
This might be too much of an inside joke, but any of these are they about vampires in Harrisburg?
Vampires in Harrisburg? No. I don't know if I should. Nah. There are no vampire stories in this collection, but
though before you got on, for some reason John was talking about Vampire Harrisburg. I don't know what that was about.
I'm not going to explain myself.
Oh, okay, good.
That's the mayor, right? Is the mayor got in trouble for like buying vampire hunting gear with city money.
Is that really what happened?
That's about like 3 or 4 years ago. Guy he got in trouble for misusing of public funds.
Okay.
Well, you know that there's been a vampire scare in Africa going on for like 4 years, right?
No.
Yeah. Do yourself a favor and Google vampire scare Africa and watch what happens.
All right then.
Yeah, because trust me on this, that is a rabbit hole.
Is that anything like the flat Earth rabbit hole?
Oh, no. This is actually more understandable. Actually, if you type vampire scare into Google, your second choice is in Malawi, and your fourth is in Africa.
All right.
But you were right about the Harrisburg mayor. He was charged with misusing public money for vampire hunting kit and a sarcophagus.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So.
But yet that wasn't what you were referring to, was it?
Partially.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Aren't there like vampire clubs in Harrisburg too? I mean, isn't that the thing? Like.
Oh, I'm sure there are. That's still a community out there.
Yeah. That reminds the unrelated note. Like, that would be a great story. The mayor really is the one guy that knows what's up.
Oh man.
But like I don't know if I ever told the Connor story. Connor, my eldest, he's like 5 years old, and we went to Menards to get stakes for garage sale signs. We were having a big community garage sale, and we were going to put some up on some of the bigger intersections. And so you can buy a pack of 12 wooden stakes for like $5 or whatever. So Connor's, like I said, he's about 5 years old. We go to the store, we go there. I pick up, that's all I'm getting. So I just pick up this twined together package of wooden sticks. We're walking back to the front of the store, and Connor says to me, what are those for, Daddy? And because I'm a dick, I said, they're for the vampires. Neighborhood is lousy with them. And Connor says, you know about that too? No, okay, let's back up a second. He's 5. And what have we learned from every movie, every Stephen King novel, everything that you've ever seen? The kids know first.
Yes.
And I'm like, what do you know? and he just laughed. And I'm like, that was deeply troubling. Like on one level it's hilarious, but on the same level, I'm like, the kids always know first. What the hell is he talking about? And it was just one of those things where it's like inexplicably hilarious, but that will bother you.
Yes. Or it could just be that he takes after his father.
Oh yeah. Well, he's a wise ass. He's definitely grown into his sarcasm. Both of them are, oh gosh, talk about creating your monsters. They are super good kids, but man, they've come by this stuff honestly. Every once in a while, like one of them will say something and back you'll be like, you did that. Like, that was your fault. Don't complain to me about it. You did it.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. Yeah. So. Yeah. Wouldn't trade him because it's not legal.
No, not at all. Gypsies don't buy them anymore. So anyway, cool. So we're getting pretty. I mean, we've been going for a little more than an hour now. So, is there any conventions or anything coming up you want people to know about?
Well, I'm not doing anything for certain. I know that there's been a lot of loose talk about maybe MegaCon or Heroes appearance for the Imminiet gang, but I don't know about that yet. It's probably too early to say.
All right.
But we're looking to do something like that. I'm not looking to do any appearances in the near future. I would rather kind of wait until the Sparkshooter thing happened, quite frankly, in order to take new stuff out. But at this point, I'd just like to tell people keep an eye out for, watch the new stuff on Sparkshooter.com and keep your eye on Imminiet.press, because when that site comes online, it'll be very cool. Awesome. And like I said, that's near future. So, and keep an eye out for the other Imminiet starters. Now, obviously, you can follow us on Facebook and Twitter, Terminal Anthology Series, Imminiet Press, and we're on those places. And I'm at Troy Brownfield on Twitter, and then, of course, Facebook. People are welcome to track me down there, as long as they're real people and not bots. So.
Cool. All right. Well, I think that's a good place to put a pin in it for this. Oh, before we sign off, I wanted to tell our listeners to check out Fans on Patrol. Their 200th episode came out this week, and I was a guest on the episode. We played a Price is Right type game where the host would say the name of it, and we all had to guess the Rotten Tomatoes score for the movie, and whoever got closest without going.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so it was cool, and you might be shocked with some of the scores, so people should definitely, cool. And and you can check them out along with and all the other great podcasts in the Nerd Podcast Mafia.com. Make sure I gave it. All right, I think on that note, boys and girls, as always, thanks for listening, and don't let your cape caught in the door.
And zip.
Zippity-doo-dah.
No, zip in a day. It'll take a while.
Zip your pants.
Whoa!
We're going through the tunnel now.
Hello, Satan.
I think the poltergeist is going to suck the hole in now.
Did you successfully find those vampires?
There he is. You hear us?
Hello, Satan. Out missing a beat. That was good.
Thank you.